I'm Nate Eaton, and this is True Crime Rocket Science.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, I don't know if there was an affair in terms of from Barry Morphew's side. Suzanne certainly seemed to suspect one. She accused him of that over text, seemed to think that that had been going on for years. But I do think that there's reason to think about that. And so we're going to be dealing with Morgan Gentile, her interview, the second one that she gave in 2 days on May 15th. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. I am in New York City at the moment. I'm in Manhattan. Please excuse if you hear sirens or sort of banging noises in the background. It's sounds on the street and also folks coming in and out the hotel. So please excuse me for that. If you want to follow my journey, you can do so for free on Instagram. I'll put a link to that in the description. I'm also doing a couple of members-only videos and then an audio diary on the $3 tier on Patreon. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. On May 15th, 2020, CBI agents Cahill and Kobach contacted Morgan at her residence at her home in Salida. Morgan spoke about conversations that George Davis, that is a friend of Barry and also someone that he would typically exercise with, work out with at George's home, and also George and Barry would if they searched for Suzanne, they tended to search together. So the police wanted to know what conversations George was having, and that possibly was he attempting to influence her testimony. Now, why would that be even necessary? And so what I think is being suggested in that paragraph from the affidavit is that the police, after having spoken to Morgan, speak to her a second time, but this time George Davis has apparently contacted her, and there's a allegation that he may be trying to influence her testimony. Morgan stated that she had recalled some additional detail about the hotel in Broomfield. Now, if you think about it, the cops are back because they didn't get a lot of information or sufficient information during their first interview. But in the meantime, George has contacted her, according to Morgan, she speculates, to influence her future testimony. And so one does wonder, did George do that? If he did it, did he do it out of his own, at his own volition, or did someone ask him to do that? Anyway, in terms of the hotel in Broomfield, Morgan explained after she and Jeff Puckett checked in, they went to their rooms. Jeff went to room 225, the one originally rented and used by Barry, and she went to room 228. Now, I think it's quite interesting that that is established, that Jeff is staying in Barry's room and she's staying in her own room, right? The other thing that's interesting is, although she's staying in her own room, she actually opens the door to Jeff's room, which is why she knows what happens there. And so one's got to wonder whether to accept her explanation that Jeff couldn't figure out how to open the hotel room door. I'm in a hotel now. It's not that difficult. But I suppose some people might put the card in the wrong way or not know what to do. But I'm not sure if you would then open the door and go inside. Anyway, so although she says she didn't stay in the room used by Barry, she opens Barry's door nevertheless with Jeff at her side. And she says when she opened the door, she immediately smelled the strong odor of chlorine. Now, if you remember the previous video I put up, we were talking about hot tub chemicals. that were bought literally the previous day. And so the question is, that smell, was that related to the hot tub chemicals that were bought? I'm saying that Barry acknowledged, he said that his wife asked him to buy hot tub chemicals, but essentially what he's acknowledging is that he bought chemicals that one tends to throw into water. And is this actually what he used it for ultimately? Is this where he used those chemicals that he bought? Morgan said that this was not the ordinary house cleaning odor. It was more consistent with what you'd smell with a pool. And that then led to this idea that it was pool chemicals, that the smell of pool chemicals that were coming through the window, but the hotel said they don't use chlorine and they weren't actually using the pool at the time. So that story didn't quite wash. Morgan stated she observed several damp and used towels on the floor. Later, Morgan stated that Jeff found an insurance document under the pillow. The document was thrown in the trash. She could not recall what was on the document. When questioned about the job sites on Saturday, May 9, 2020, Morgan said she recalled an odd comment made by Barry. Morgan said after they completed the beach at the River House 6962, in Salida, she rode with Barry to the next site. Morgan stated she commented that pigs could eat an entire human body in 2 days. Quite an obscure statement to make. Maybe she'd been watching one of those Hannibal movies, because I think something like that's mentioned in that. Barry commented that he would be able to, quote, bury a body, unquote, and it would never be found. Also a strange thing to say. We spoke with Morgan about Barry's financial activities, and this to me is the standout discovery, the standout insight from this whole interview, along with the smell of, chlorine in the hotel room. Bear in mind, there was also a slight smell when they opened Patrick Frazier's fiance's home. Is it Woodland Park? And it turned out that his mistress had extensively used bleach and successfully actually got rid of all the DNA. And that's a case that preceded this one. So one wonders whether a similar strategy wasn't being applied. Anyway, Morgan stated that Barry contacted his stockbroker Dan on a daily basis, and I think that is very interesting. And if you think about it, a stock trader is someone who is making trades, deals, in a way gambling on a daily basis, and it shows that the financial thing was a real and present thing for Barry. You could say it was an issue, but it was nevertheless something that was constant. And it was, I think, a way that he was trying to enhance his financial situation. And the question then is, was he doing it successfully? It's interesting that all we know is this guy's name's Dan. It would really be interesting if they could track him down, find out what these trades were, find out how successful Barry was ultimately. But the fact that he was speaking to him on a daily basis just shows Barry's interest in his own financial affairs. Now, at the bottom of page 50, Morgan provided a timeline on July 29th, 2020. So this was essentially her third interview with the police. Morgan Gentile provided a handwritten timeline to Sheriff John Spezzi. The following lines were noted by Special Agent Grussing for the affidavit. For Sunday, May 10th, Morgan wrote that she heard Barry's truck at 5 a.m. She added, 11:15, Barry called. He was out of breath, panting but fatigued, kind of like a hangover, but he doesn't drink. Honestly, when I hung up, I thought to myself, he sounded like he had the worst night of his life. Not really sure what that's supposed to mean. Morgan provided more detail about her trip to the Broomfield Hotel, to include her route on May 10th. She wrote, arrived at hotel 10:30, grabbed Barry's tools, went to check in. Now, as she writes it down, she writes 10:00 to 10:30. And is that a typo? Because she certainly wasn't at the hotel at that time. But she was there, I think she said 10:30 at night. And so one wonders what that's all about. Is that a typo? Did she mean to write 10 p.m.? Or is that a distortion? Bear in mind, she hasn't wanted to take a polygraph. She's also denied an affair with Barry Morphew. But what does really stand out in this is her making contact with Dan. It begs the question, what was Barry's financial situation just before Suzanne disappeared? Well, if anyone would know, Dan probably would. So I'm not going to take it further than that. I will continue with the deep dives into Barry's 13 statements. We'll deal with the second of 13 in the next episode. This is TCRS from New York. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.